This is the beginning of the next part of our evening together. It's a doctoral dissertation by our next speaker, Margaret Hunt, and it's titled Dutiful Daughters and the Fathers Who Failed Them. The application of feminist insights and the retrieval of resisting strands of women's traditions via a narrative analysis of 4 unmarried daughter texts in the Hebrew Bible. In short, we're going to begin an introduction to Zelophehad's daughters, as presented to us by Margaret Hunt. So I'd like to now welcome Margaret to the front and we'll organise a microphone for
you. Now, Dr. Fitt introduced Zelophehad's daughters to you, and if you look at your program, what is this about? Who are they? Some of you know. Others have never heard of them because the 3-year lectionary in the church never mentions them. That passages, the 4 places in the Bible where these 5 sisters appear, and all their names appear 4 times, we never hear about in the congregations. But you're going to start hearing about them tonight, and I think tomorrow. The Zelophehad daughters made their name 3,000 years ago, and have nothing to do with women's ordination, but they have a lot to teach us in 2012. And I think it's about time we heard more about them. Okay. Now, Zelophehad's daughters were part of my thesis, so I grew to love them. They were my favourite group of young women, and I'd like to share their story with you very briefly tonight. And it's an introduction to what's going to happen tomorrow. Actually, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I can organise that, so if it's challenging tomorrow, or funny, or strange, is it Tom there? Yeah. John. Okay. 3 years ago, in July, the Women's Ministry Network had a conference at the corner church, Oaklands Park, and it was called the Extravagant Hearth. And one of the presentations was on Zelophehad's daughters. That's where the story was told of Zelophehad's daughters, and you've got the first part of that in your folder. The achievement of the Zelophehad sisters galvanised some of the conference attendees to challenge their own church leaders to bring to General Synod, which was a few months later, to bring a new proposal to welcome women into leadership of the Lutheran Church of Australia. So the challenge came from 5 girls from ancient Israel. Now the presentation began with an imaginative step into one day in the lives of 5 Israelite sisters who were born and grew up in the Sinai desert 3,000 years ago. So it's while the wilderness wanderings were happening. And I asked the audience to imagine that, so you can do that tonight too. Imagine that you were a young woman, single, with 4 sisters, all unmarried. You were fatherless. You belonged to the half-tribe of Manasseh, which, along with the other 11.5 tribes of Israel, is camped on the plains of Moab and preparing to invade a land which you believe God has given to your people to possess forever. So imagine you are this young woman, and today is shaping up to be a momentous day. Why? This is what has happened. All the men of Israel have been counted in the census, only the men, and they are to be allocated Canaanite land accordingly. But your family has no allocation because your parents birthed 5 daughters and no sons. And without land, your father's name disappears. Land was absolutely central to Israelites' thinking. Norm Harmel, who's my supervisor, has written a book about the importance of land. So this is no trivial matter that these daughters are involved in tonight. To you, as a Zelophehad daughter, it seems totally unjust. You and your sisters think deeply about the situation and talk it over. You come to a decision. You are going to take it to court. You plan carefully and you rehearse what to say. So the day of opportunity has arrived, and all the adult men of Israel are assembled before the tent of meeting, within which is the divine presence. That is actually a photo of the plain of Moab, but just imagine all the thousands of men there. This is the high court of Israel with Moses and the high priest Eleazar and all the leaders and all the men of the 12 tribes of Israel in attendance. It is a truly awe-inspiring occasion. Approaching the court with dignity, respect and hammering hearts are Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah and Tirzah, the 5 daughters of Zelophehad. You are Mahlah, the eldest, and you are speaking for every sister. One voice, 5 determined young women. The mid-morning sun beats down. As far as the eye can see, the host of Israel stands silently, waiting to hear your petition. This is what you say. Our father died in the wilderness. He was not in the group who gathered against the Lord in the company of Korah, but he died because of his own sin. He had no sons. Why should the name of our father be cut off from his clan because he had no son? Give us a possession among our father's brothers. Now, there's a, well, probably not famous painting, but a painting, if you Google it, appears quite often, of the girls putting their petition to Moses and the high priest and the elders. Okay, you can step out of the Mahlah character now. I then asked, what do you notice about this speech? What does it tell us about these 5 young women who are sisters? And what would you expect to happen next? And we listened to but what would happen. What would happen in the LCA? Okay, what happened? Moses refers the claim to God. He doesn't just make it up out of the top of his head. God says to Moses, the daughters of Zelophehad are right. You must give them land entitlement alongside his brothers, the brothers of Zelophehad. Later, the men of Gilead, who are their relatives, of course, complained to Moses and the leaders, but it was not so much that the women spoke up, it was more about if they got the land and married somebody in another tribe, then that land might go to another tribe. So the men do not dispute God's ruling in favour of the sisters, but they are concerned that if the sisters marry into another tribe, the sisters' land will be lost from Gilead. God agrees with them, and the sisters are required to marry within their clan. The sisters comply with the ruling and marry their cousins, their father's brothers' sons, which is the perfect marriage. So they must have found enough cousins to marry. But what's interesting is they chose their husbands. This happened 3,000 years ago. And of course you think Jane Austen and Pride and Prejudice, it was only 300 years ago, girls weren't allowed to inherit, and that was a big theme in the story, that their house would have gone to Mr. Collins. But in this case, 3,000 years ago, these girls actually could inherit the land as long as they married the right people within the clan. Okay, after that, the Israelites invaded Canaan, and that was a drawn-out affair. But after they were established in Canaan, or partially established there, Joshua and Eleazar set up a land distribution court. So the sisters, again, go to court and they say, the Lord commanded Moses to give us an entitlement along with our male relatives. I just thought they'd come and remind them. And then the sisters each receive double allotments. A double blessing is a blessing of firstborn male. Now, I know there's argument about some people saying, no, that didn't go towards sisters. But if you read it in the Bible, in Joshua 17, you can read it that Manasseh, the tribe of Manasseh, got 10 extra portions because of the daughters of Zelophehad. So it may not have gone to the daughters, but I like to believe that it did. Because the more you read about ancient Israel, the more you realise that in the early days there was a lot more equality of women because they were valuable to help on the farms. Farm girls are far more valuable than city girls. And women were valuable there. Okay, so in July 2009, the attendees were then asked the following questions. What difficulties did Marlon and the sisters face? What were their strategies? How did they manage the setback? That was, you can't marry after the plan. What can we learn from the Zelophehad sisters? And how can the sisters' achievement inspire us as members of the LCA in 2009? And there's a whole lot of stuff there, which, we've got a few minutes. You probably can't read that very well, but I want you to think about what were some of the strategies and some of the things that the sisters did that could inspire us today with our cause. Their cause was to receive land that they thought was unjustly going to their cousins or uncles. The sisters know what they want and they say what they want. They just say, give us the land. They don't say, well, if it's okay with you, or we're only single women and we really haven't got a right to speak to men. They also accept the terms of God's change of the agreement because they see that they're reasonable, and later they ensure that they receive that. So they go to the court that Joshua set up and says, here we are, we've come for our land. They decide what injustice is and what they want to happen to remedy the situation. So they get justice. They just say what they want and they get it. They prepare their petition and their argument by gathering the correct facts for their case. What they say is obviously well thought out, and it was said in a way that was not offensive to the men. They explained why they thought they should get the land, and that their father didn't die because he was part of the rebellion, he just died naturally. And they decided to go to the highest court of the land. And they're strategic in the wording, they are succinct, direct, and they say exactly what they seek to achieve. No beating around the bush with these girls. They choose an optimal time to present their case before they enter the land. And they decide who will speak. I don't know if they really did, I just imagine they did. And how they will speak. And just think, this is in the Bible. Their names are mentioned, all the names of the girls mentioned 4 times. They were pretty famous. Part of the oral tradition, which was written down about 500 years before Jesus, we think, and they were remembered. And yes, they comply with all the changes and they ensure that the leaders keep their word at the end. So I think they're pretty inspiring, and this is what I said to the group. And I think we can show a picture at the end. Somebody did a sculpture of them. I don't know why one of them looks about 5 years old. She would have been a bit young to marry, but of course who knows what the reality was. But at the end of that session we had a discussion, and tomorrow you'll see what the outcome of that was. I think Vic hinted at it and I hinted at it, but I hope it was very interesting for you to take part in tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Margaret, very much for that invitation. We look forward to hearing the outcomes of tomorrow. Just very present to say thank you. You're welcome.
Several years ago, a group of women decided to visit a pastors' conference. Inspired by the story of Zelophehad's daughters, they wanted to present themselves to those with the power to vote for women's ordination. Like Mala, Noah, Hogla, Milcah and Tirzah, they hoped to present their story to have their voices heard. This is their story.
We must speak before the great court of Israel. Only they can change the law in our favour. Yet we have no representative in that mighty group of men, for we have no brothers. That is indeed the problem.
We could ask a sympathetic pastor to speak for us, yet it seems right to present ourselves, as Zelophehad's daughters did, to argue our own case. For there are no women in that group. If we did, there would be no need to speak.
Because we have no brothers, our family will receive no land. Our father's name will be lost. He was a good man. He does not deserve this. We do not deserve this.
They say a change will come. Due process will be followed. But what of the women who could preach and cannot? Think of the untapped talent, those who have been called yet can't serve, those who are stifled, those who find some other unsatisfying role, those who leave in frustration. Why waste all this? Why should this be lost?
I believe our case has merit. God gave us his law, yet where does this leave us?
We struggle to reconcile unchanging law with social change. We looked for a deeper understanding and found it.
Surely when the court sees how this affects us, they will reconsider. The law is good, but if it fails us, could it be better?
Those opposed to our cause need to see real women, real people presenting their case. Not a theological quibble, but humanity, here, now.
When our turn came, it was terrifying to be called before the court, to be the centre of attention.
We dutifully arrived when we were asked to, so as not to disturb them. We were ready to speak, nervous despite our prepared speech. Yet even that was denied us. They were already crying out.
We stated our case clearly. We cited the law, yet pointed out how it failed us, failed our family. We were heard.
We stood at the doors and handed out leaflets. We talked to men we knew, men we didn't. It wasn't what we planned for, but we made real connections.
The court argued, some in support, others opposed.
The case has been made again and again, yet somehow it's never quite enough. The arguments for and against are known, yet never seem to go anywhere near. It always seems easier not to change.
In the end, Moses decided to bring it to God. We will abide by God's judgment.
The curtain is torn, no longer the divide. There's no single conduit to God, no spokesperson who could reclaim his decision and be accepted. We are one body, with many voices.
We had made our case, done all we could. Now we hoped and prayed.
We keep planting seeds and hoping the result is out of our hands.